This is the PTI Smarter Venues podcast.
So welcome along to the PTI Smarter Venues first official Vodcast to supplement our podcast series. We're here today at Carrow Road. I'm delighted to be joined by Norwich City's Chief Operating Officer, Ben Kensell. Ben, welcome.
Thank you.
We're going to be talking about all things Norwich City today, and particularly that journey back to the Premier League and back into the top 20 of English football. So, Ben, from your role as Chief Operating Officer, how did the operational strategy and the changes have to come into effect over the summer with the move back into the Premier League?
Yeah, well, it was a huge, almost sudden evolution of change because even though we went up quite comfortably in the end as champions, massive amounts of pride comes from the city and comes from everyone and the fans and the staff involved. Suddenly, reality dawns that actually there's a lot of operational requirements that need to be dealt with. The minute you go up, your focus flips from, okay, what do I need to do to firstly be compliant? And the Premier League, what I would say about the Premier League is their governance and regulations are spot on, and their communication is exemplary, really. So we had a very brief meeting, and then they spelled out all of the areas that needed sudden improvements and large spends when it comes to infrastructure. So following that, there was a plan put in place, and then there was no holidays taken over that period.
Quite right. And you went up quite early at the end of April last year. So was that a difficult distraction? Back end of the season, we still want points on the pitch, but knowing what you've got to come.
No, I mean
going up into the Premier League.
If anything, I think it helped. I mean, I'd rather go up that way than go up via the playoffs. It gives you them extra weeks to plan mainly. We couldn't resource up as a club. We believe that we've got the right kind of size team for whatever league we're playing in. But what we could do is give ourselves a little bit more time to plan.
So what were the key projects? What were the key deliverables that you had to get in place?
So mainly governance led through the Premier League around a lot of the broadcast. With the new tranche of broadcast rights that have come in, it's the start of a 3-year cycle, and we unfortunately at the back end of when we were in the Premier League 4 years ago, we didn't really have an opportunity to upgrade our facilities. Then we decided to spend all of our monies on the pitch and on the players in order to try and keep us there. We were ultimately unsuccessful with that, and I think what we were trying to do is learn some of the lessons of the past. So this time it was a case of, right, let's understand what we absolutely need to do from a compliance perspective, whether it be around broadcast, whether it be around our disability sort of areas. Are they up to speed with everything that we need? And there is ultimately a long list of things that Premier League clubs need to comply with, and we need to start ticking through them. So there was a raft of operational projects, there was a raft of infrastructure projects, some things that you can't even see, really. They're not really tangible. But what they do is they ensure that we're fit for purpose, and that we can, if we stay up, we can actually continue to invest in things that perhaps aren't necessarily just compliance.
And you just touched on it there. You've obviously taken a very different approach in terms of the Premier League money coming in and how that's being spent by the club versus the on-the-field structure of previous. Should you touch on that a little bit?
Yeah, it's just a balance more than anything. I think as a self-financed club, we're massively proud of that. But equally, we've got to be really clear and concise around, we only have a finite amount of money that we can spend outside of Stuart's budget and Daniel's budget. So that was set in stone, and then it's almost a case of, right, how can we ring fence certain monies to ensure that we can, one, tick the compliance piece, but two, just bring the club forward and actually have something to show from the Premier League kind of time. So a lot of that money was well documented. It's gone into our training ground to improve the facilities over there. Some of that money has been placed in Carrow Road, and what we've now got is we've got a clear 3-year plan around if we were successful in staying in the Premier League, or if we do drop back down to the Championship, we know what we are going to be spending on our venue moving forward across Carrow Road and Colney.
So, and you describe yourself as aiming to be a top 26 club in England. What does that actually mean in practice for you guys?
Well, I think it means ultimately being competitive as whether you're in the Championship or whether you're in the Premier League. I mean, we have no divine right when we're spending the types of money that we're spending on the pitch. to remain in the Premier League. You've seen many clubs spend vast amounts and be unsuccessful, and then they put themselves in quite a difficult situation financially. We're not going to do that. As custodians of the football club, we want to be really clear and transparent with our fans that this is the plan. We'll only spend what we can generate. So on my side of the fence, it's very important that we're as efficient as we can be, but that we grow the revenue streams to the maximum level that we can. We're doing that, and it's part of a process that I think we've just got to be really clear, and we are. And I think one of the things that we're really proud of is the recent kind of record that we've had with our fan base and how we've communicated with them. I think they're now starting to get that message loud and clear that we're a proud self-finance club. We're going to do things right, and what we're not going to do is potentially mortgage our future.
And that communication, I guess, was key. The Football Fan Experience Awards came out just a few days ago at the time of recording. Norwich obviously scored highly as a Premier League club in that. Is the communication a big part of that from your perspective?
Huge. And I don't think you can be successful with the model that we have without being really open and transparent with your fan base. Because naturally people want us to spend a lot of money on players that will improve us in their eyes, and we hope in our eyes. But we also need to have a club in 20 years' time that's really fit for purpose. And if we are truly going to be a top 26 club, what we can't have is this yo-yo effect of going up, going down, and then being in a position where we have to, bring in new floodlights, build a new kind of technology infrastructure. We need to have already built them and laid foundations that are very, very clear that we can then build on year on year on year. And I think we've just started that. I think this summer has given us that breathing space, that opportunity to have that long-term plan. That means that we're not starting from ground zero again.
Yep.
If we were to drop and then go back up, we're actually building on top of the strong foundations that we put in place.
And thinking about technology and fan experience and the sort of the matchday experience at Carrow Road, how do you see that playing out over the next couple of years? How important is technology becoming to your matchday?
Hugely, and I think it's probably been under-resourced and under-invested in the past. And I don't know whether that's similar to a lot of clubs, but certainly that's my experience of going into other clubs. They've either invested heavily and they're the ones that are streets ahead, or they haven't, like this football club, and they're starting again. And I think the partnership with PTI and ourselves, the commitment to really build a roadmap moving forward. I think the most important thing is that foundation piece. Once again, we talk about sometimes a lot of that investment goes into things that you can't see, you can't touch, you can't feel. But actually, when we're talking about the fan experience, and that's probably built on them foundations. So whether it's an app, whether it's a website, whether it's how do we engage with our fans, quite frankly, we can do nothing without getting them foundations right. And I think we are not experts in that field. I have fantastic staff here at the football club. But I do think that is an area that you either have to invest in bringing incredibly talented people in to lead that, or you need to outsource that provision to experts that can then guide you through that journey. And I think, from my perspective, we chose that approach with PTI, but it was done because we are not the experts, and I've looked at it, and one of the areas that we were failing in at the football club was probably that whole technology piece. I'm really confident now moving forward that we've got the right in-house team, because I think the blend is very important to me.
Absolutely.
And the right kind of medium-term strategy that maps that out.
And was there a cultural change required almost to justify investment into things that are invisible? It's often the hardest sellable. When someone says, how does that go influence the fan? An app's very tangible. You can see it, you can download it, you can play with it. When it's network infrastructure or cabling and sort of boring back-of-house pieces and selling that, it's often more of a challenge. Was that a cultural shift for the club?
Yeah, massive. But cultural tweaking has to always happen. I mean, the one thing I've said to a lot of the staff is around stay in your lane. And for me, ultimately, if you are an operator, stay in your lane. Let's not try and merge technology with that. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to change culturally to, let's bolt that on to someone else's role. No, they're not the experts in that. So let's keep them the experts in the lane that they're in, and let's change culturally to accept that perhaps we're not great in this area. So what we do need to do is we need to invest in this area, or we need to bring the experts in that can advise us on the best investment pathway moving forward. And I think that cultural piece, when you explain it to people, takes away perhaps an element of mystery around, what's happening here is within the organisation. No, what we've done is we've stripped everything back. Every department and every area and every function has objectives now. And actually, technology is probably, similar to a finance, is at the heartbeat of a lot of what them departments probably need. And that's where we were struggling, because we were hitting roadblocks when it was coming up against anything that was either systems, IT or technology led. So therefore, then it's not rocket science to say perhaps that's an area that we've underinvested or we're under-resourced in. But it's important to then get the right lane and bring in the people that are experts in that to deliver against it.
Yeah, we often run activities with people about the technology list match day. How are you adding value? How are you getting people in? How are you selling tickets? How are you collecting data and delivering on that? As a club, where are you at on sort of the data and insight journey that's going to help to create the next level of value for your sponsors, but also help you target fans and provide them with the things that they're looking for, versus management reporting and you at the top being able to understand exactly what's going on across the club?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're at the beginning of that journey, but the slightly odd situation is that if we went back many years, we were probably pioneering in that area, but what we haven't done is we haven't continued on that journey, and we've probably fallen behind. As I look at it at the moment, when I've visited other clubs, I've been envious of their position and situation when I see their reporting, their data, that data intelligence is actually sort of shaping the way that they're doing business, the way that they're marketing, the way that they are selling tickets. I'm quite envious of that. So for me, we're at the beginning of that journey, but I'm also aware and comfortable with the fact that isn't just a quick fix, because you can make real mistakes, and other venues and other businesses and football clubs have actually told me the mistakes that they've made, and the pitfalls. So what we don't want to do is make mistakes. Our money needs to go a lot further than perhaps some other football clubs' money, because we are that self-finance model. So for us, we're at the beginning of that journey. We've got phenomenal support as a football club, unbelievable season ticket base, membership base, so and general support. So what we should be doing is we should be thinking that everything we do on the technology front needs to be at the heart of them, and they need to be part of that decision-making process. So, I think we're at the beginning of the journey, but I think we're mapping out based on prior experiences of perhaps things that haven't worked from other clubs or from here at the football club, and I'm quite comfortable with that approach.
And talking about the support base and the fan base and looking away from football, you recently spoke on the concert announcements and bringing more to the people of Norwich. Is that a big part of the long-term strategy now for you guys?
Yeah, we are a community hub. We're a one club, one city, and we're immensely proud of that. But not just that, we've kind of got a duty to do that. We've got a venue that shouldn't be open 25, 30 times a year. It needs to be open more. One, to generate revenue, but two, to actually sort of be a venue that everyone in Norwich can be proud of. Bringing events like Killers, selling out in under 45 minutes is exactly what we want to be doing. But equally, I'm just as proud of Westlife coming and us being a multiple concert venue. I think we have a window of about a month that we can do this, where stuff on the pitch, and ultimately that's a commercial reality that we need to maximise everything that we can throughout that period. But how can we do that better, and how can we continuously improve on everything that we do? And I think that's at the heartbeat of the club, along with the fan base, is that enthusiasm to constantly review and improve and almost impatiently and unapologetically move forward and sort of say, no, it's not about what, it's about what's next. How can we improve that? How can we get better? And I think that the whole concert piece is, we started out, was lucky enough to do a lot of that at Arsenal, but for me, moving forward, I want this to become an established concert venue, football stadium, community hub and conference and banqueting centre. The technology, once again, is at the heart of the majority of them things that we just spoke about. So that's how we're trying to move it forward.
And when we think about fan buzz coming back into the football world, obviously we're here on a match day today. But I guess the highlight of the season so far would definitely be the home victory against Manchester City. Just describe a little bit of the buzz around the place on the day and sort of thereafter from a fan perspective with that.
Yeah, I mean, it's important to note it's one match, and there are many matches that we need to be successful in to achieve our goals. But no, it was an incredible day, and one that will live long in the memory. For me, for different reasons, because unfortunately after the match at the full-time whistle, we had a record number of cardiac arrests, which might say something about the match, but operationally it went from quite an amazing moment to actually a full-on sort of mode around, right, how do we support the fans that are actually in a bit of a bad spot at that point. But clearly our performance and the result may have pulled that on or brought that on. So it was quite a mixed day for me personally, but no, for the city, for the club, for the players, for the staff, they absolutely deserved the plaudits that day, and it was a day that will live long in the memory.
Well, that would certainly be a great example of one of those things that you'd never consider unless you worked in football or you worked in a venue environment as to what can bring a buzz down after that type of events. From your perspective, a few months into the Premier League season, what would be your top 3 takeaways or learnings that you've had since the promotion through to where you are today? In terms of the club infrastructure on the field or off the field, what would be the pieces of advice you'd give to clubs who are potentially looking at the Championship table at the moment, thinking we're in with a shot of going up here? What advice would you give to those guys?
Well, I think very much dependent on structure, because clubs have different structures, and some have chief exec models. We don't. We have a shared kind of leadership structure. On my side, which is the non-football side, my focus would be on the planning. First of all, there is no real reason that you can't plan, regardless of where you are in the league, around a Premier League model versus a Championship model. I've always been a keen believer that plan needs to come across all of the budgets, but also operations as well, and the finance teams. For a club that wants to be top 26, you almost have to have 2 plans. So I think planning's key. I think the next one is, don't underestimate that summer window and how much you need to actually get in and fill in and work during that period. You have a finite period of time to actually deliver everything that you need to deliver from a Premier League perspective. And yes, you can ask for dispensation, but as a venue, you really want to be fit for purpose when you first kick that ball in the Premier League. And I think people underestimate, with the staffing levels that they have, the sheer amount of work that is required to tick the multiple boxes that you need to be compliant as a venue. And then the third one, I think this one for me is just to enjoy the achievement that you've made collectively as a team. And I think that comes down to that enjoyment is across your fan base, but also your staff base as well. And I think sometimes what happens is, as a venue or as a business, you're so hell-bent on moving forward, and we certainly are as a football club and the staff that we have here, that sometimes just take a moment to reflect. And when you achieve something so fantastic for a club of our size, sometimes you can just move on very, very quickly. But by collectively taking time to review or to just enjoy the moment, it actually helps with definitely the second point that I raised, which was, don't underestimate that time period in the summer. Because when you're all pulling in the same direction, when you have such commitment to a cause and to delivering something, I think you need to cultivate that. Because if you don't cultivate that, number 2 becomes very hard. And planning, really, there is no excuse for you not to plan. So I would say them 3 things. One is kind of staff and cultural based. One is planning, and the other is quite frankly, absolutely being in a position where you know that then 8 weeks or playoffs pending and things like that, you need to get all of your ducks in a row. And if you miss opportunities during that period of time, you really do miss financial opportunities, operational opportunities, technology opportunities to really roll out throughout the whole of the season.
Touching back to an earlier point on broadcast, obviously Amazon are taking broadcast rights on Boxing Day in the Premier League for the first time this year and showing all games. Yeah. How do you see that broadcast rights package as it next renews unfolding. I guess there's a lot of questions in the marketplace. A third Premier League chief executive resigns before starting, and broadcast is being sort of defined as one of those pieces. How do you see that from your perspective as a club director?
Well, I think it's incredibly difficult to follow Richard Scudamore, right? So therefore, that's an unenviable task from that perspective. But what I would say around the broadcast piece is I think it's a really, really exciting future for broadcast, because ultimately the work done by the broadcast team and in ensuring that the rights is grown and grown and grown, from my perspective, it has to plateau at some point. But with new entries into the market and new ways to consume football, I just find that as a customer, as a fan, as a consumer, I think that's really, really exciting, because quite frankly, the world is moving in that direction. So you have to embrace it. You have to deliver against it. And we had a presentation from Amazon around how they were going to deliver this, and it was mind blowing. I mean, they are putting on a real show, and I was thinking to myself, right, how can you not be excited by this? Equally, I think the traditional broadcasters, Sky and BT, and those that have the rights, do a fantastic job of not just showing you the match. The stories around what happens and the broadcast that happens pre and post and during, I think it's just got better and better and better. So the product, at the end of the day, the Premier League product, is just up there, and it's literally on a pedestal at the moment. I think that's really exciting. So other means of consuming or watching football or the Premier League product, I think is only good for the marketplace. But
do you see that as causing any challenge to matchday attendance figures? If the broadcast experience at home is so good and so immersive and tells you that behind the scenes story, do you see that as a risk or a threat to ticket sales and hospitality sales?
Yeah, of course it's a threat, because ultimately people can have it at the touch of a button. But I think the club needs to work then harder on what that matchday experience is like, because you can't beat it. Being inside the ground and having that feeling of half an hour before kickoff and walking into the ground and then consuming it live is like nothing else. It's the convenience factor of watching it on TV and the analysis that comes with that. But you will never, ever be able to replicate what it is like watching live sport, live football. It's incredible. And especially in a packed crowd like ours, and our fill rates being the highest in the Premier League, it's why wouldn't you want to continue that? But you do need that phenomenal support. You need that commitment from our fan base to say, no, what I'm not going to do is subscribe to all of these different broadcasters and all of these different feeds, and I'm going to still come out on a lovely sunny day or a rainy day, because you can't beat that in-game, that live experience within the bowl. And that'll always be my take. I'm 38, and I still believe that you watch football live if you possibly can. And I always would try to. So I see it being naturally a threat, of course, but equally an opportunity to grow revenues even further. So that's an opportunity as just as much as a threat.
One of the other digital pieces that's been coming up is obviously the Access All Areas and documentaries with Man City and Spurs on the go. Norwich City interested in that, telling the story and being behind the scenes? Can we see a world in which there is a Norwich City version out in the marketplace?
Well, I can't say, you can never say never, but from my perspective, no, I don't think that's us as a club. I would rather be open, transparent with our fan base rather than sensationalise it to millions of people that might have an interest or might not have an interest. I think if we can stay true to our core principles and values and deliver against our objectives, I think, and be really clear with the communication to our fans, I think that's us as a club. I think we're a relatively humble club, just trying to do things the right way with the resources that we generate ourselves, and we're proud of that. And our messaging has all been around come on the journey with us. And if everyone pulls in the right direction with the players that are homegrown from our perspective, that's a marginal gain for us. That gives us a point of difference to other clubs. And if we can continue doing that and we can be successful and we can keep our fan base fully behind us, our staff fully behind us and leading us in that kind of direction, we can beat anyone, in my opinion. So do we need to put a documentary out that sort of shows what we're doing? Not really. We're not that sort of club. But they're a brilliant watch for all the others, if I'm honest. So I've seen them all, and they're infectious to kind of watch. So no, it's just not really for me personally. And I don't think it would be the type of thing that the club would want to do. But we've got our lane, and we're happy to stick in it.
Great. And just finally, then it'd be rude not to ask the predictions for the rest of the season type question. So who do you think's winning it, and what are the fortunes of Norwich City as we go through?
Yeah, I think Liverpool are going to win it. I think that's, but I thought it would be closer, if I'm honest. So, that's my take on that. Liverpool are easily the best team that we've played, in my opinion. How are Norwich going to get on the pitch? I mean, look, if we continue playing our way, then I'll be proud wherever we end up. And I think that's probably the overriding thing. Of course we want to stay up. Of course we want to be a Premier League club moving forward. But we've got a model whereby if we were to be unsuccessful in staying up, we'll be absolutely hell-bent on getting back up there, because everyone wants to operate in the Premier League. And I think we'll stay up. Of course I do. But and why wouldn't we think that? We've got just as good a chance as anyone else. But we have no divine right to stay up for the money that we've spent on the pitch compared to others. But we do it our way. We're a humble team, and we've certainly got a style and a way of playing, and we're immensely proud of that. I think the work that Daniel's done and his coaching team in bringing through players is commendable, and he deserves all the plaudits for that. So as long as it's an exciting ride, which I'm sure it will be, it'll certainly be a roller coaster, and as long as everyone stays with us, this club's got a really clean bill of health. So whatever league we're in, we'll be competitive.
Perfect. Well, Ben,
cheers.
Thanks very much for your time. Best of luck for the match today.
Thanks for listening to the PTI Smarter Venues podcast. Find out more about us at ptismartervenues.com.